All right, subscribers, welcome back to another episode of Science with Surback. Today what we're going to do is a little bit of extra practice on scientific notation. So we're going to simply express some numbers in scientific notation, and then we'll move on to adding and subtracting, and we'll finish with multiplying and dividing. And I'm going to put this at every single page here. All of these answers, what's really nice, yes, we have a set of rules, but you can double check with your calculator. So again, we at the end of these problems are going to double check with a calculator. Okay, so we start out, and I'm going to do problems 1A and 1C. And our rules for our scientific notation is you need to find the decimal. And if the decimal's not there, like it is on 1A, you assume it's at the very right-hand side. So we assume it's right here on the right-hand side. And what you do, you create those humps until there is just one number, to the left of the decimal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so now I only have one number to the left of the decimal there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down all non-zero numbers in this number here. So what I would have is I would have 5.453. And then what we do here is we put the times 10 business. That's expressing our number in scientific notation. Now the zeros don't need to be there because they are placeholder zeros and we don't need to worry about them. Now the exponent that we put in the upper right hand corner of this 10 is equivalent to the number of humps that we have moved the decimal. So we had 1 hump, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to put a 6. And now the question should come, okay, is this a positive or negative 6? Well, if you move the decimal from right to left, again, moving to the left, it is a positive number. So this would be a positive 6. Now, it's a measured quantity here, so this would be m for meters. Now, again, that is the answer to 1A. The nice thing about this, if you use a scientific calculator, not so much on your phone, but a scientific calculator, and I type in the number exactly as it's written on the worksheet here, so 5453 with 3 zeros, I press enter. Now, I'm in a regular mode here. I can get it if I press second psi to ing and I scroll over to psi, 5.53 times 10 to the 6. That matches exactly what we wrote down. So our rules work. We can double check with that calculator. Now I'm going to do problem 1C. Okay, so again, first rules, find that decimal. Okay, so the decimal is right here, and we move it until there is one non-zero number to the left of the decimal. So we have 1, 2, 3. We put that decimal there. I write down all non-zero numbers, so this would look like 5.36 times 10. The number of humps becomes your exponent in that upper right-hand corner of 10. So we moved it 1, 2, 3. But this time we moved the decimal to the right. So if you move the decimal to the right, the exponential power becomes negative. So we moved it 3. So this becomes times 10 to the negative 3 power, or times 10 to the negative 3rd power. And again, it's a measured quantity, so we have to put Ng for nanograms. Now, that is our answer. But once more, if you're unsure about yourself, you can always double check it in your calculator. Again, I already converted back to our standard mode there. And so we had 0.00536. I press enter. Again, we need to get it into scientific notation with our scientific calculator. You press second, psi to ing. You scroll over to psi, and check that out. 5.36 times 10 to the negative third. That matches out. That is a really nice feature in your calculators to double check yourself. All right, so now let's go ahead, let's move to adding and subtraction on the next page. Now, I need you to do 1B along with 1D through 1L. Those you need to do on your own. Let's move on to the next page here. All right, so now we are adding and subtracting. We are adding and subtracting numbers in scientific notation. Now, again, I'm going to put this same statement out here, is that you need to double check these answers with a calculator. And again, your phone's not going to do it justice. You need a scientific calculator there. That will really help in this process. Now, the rules for adding and subtracting numbers in scientific notation is this. The power, so that exponent must be the same, and then it's like adding or subtracting like we would do on an everyday basis. So we look at problem 2a, and we ask ourselves, okay, both of these things need to be times 10 to the second power, and they are. So because they are in the same power, all we need to do is we need to add the coefficients, the numbers out in front together. So because they're in the same power, all we do is we say 3 plus 5. Well, 3 plus 5 is 8, and then we're going to have this times 10 business, and the power is not going to change. So it's going to be times 10 to the second, and that is still meters. All right? That's pretty easy because they are in the same power. Now, we can double check that in our calculator here, okay? The key thing when you double check this in your calculator is putting a set of parentheses. So when I put this into my calculator, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have 3 times 10 root 2 plus 5 times 10 root 2. I press enter, and I get a value of 800. Now, you're maybe saying, okay, that does not match this, but remember, we have the times 10 to the second. So let me get it into scientific notation. So I'm going to go second, psi to ing, press psi, and hey, look, 8 times 10 to the second, exactly what we wrote down. So we are good to go on problems 2a. Now, I want to try a subtraction problem where these exponents are not the same. So let's try 2g here together. And we have this. On 2g, we have 7.623 times 10 to the 5th nanometers minus 8.32 times 10 to the 4th nanometers. Now, you need to have the exponents in the same value. And it doesn't matter which one you convert, but what I would suggest is converting the smaller exponent to the larger. So what I'm going to do is to make that exponent larger, to go from a 4 to 5, I need to take this decimal on 8.32 and move it over 1. So when I do that, I didn't change anything for my number out in front, so I still have 7.623 times 10 to the 5th nanometers minus, this is my change, 0.832 times 10, and because we moved the decimal to the left, from right to left, this number here, the exponent increases to that 5th power, which is what we want. Now, we're dealing with some bigger numbers here, so it's okay to plug these numbers into the problem here. But what we're going to do, we're going to subtract the coefficients. So we're going to take 7.623 minus 0.832. So 7.623 minus 0.832. We press enter. We get a value of 6.791. And we need to do one more step, and that is this. We say times 10 to the same power that we have in our conversion here. So it's times 10 to the 5th nanometers. And that becomes our answer. Again, always double check with yourself, especially if you're unsure with our subtraction here. Now, if you put this into the calculator, make sure you use parentheses. And I'm going to use the original numbers that are given. So we have parenthesis here, 7.623 times 10 to the 5th minus 8.32 times 10 to the 4th. Close that parenthesis. Again, we get a big number, but we're not in scientific notation. So we hit second, psi, enter, and look, 6.791 times 10 to the 5th. That matches exactly what we have here. So those scientific calculators, once again, are a very good double check for our scientific notation. All right, so one more set of problems, and that is multiplying and dividing. And I think you'll like this a little bit better. All right, so multiplying and dividing. Again, I'm going to put this at the top just as a reminder. You need to double check with a calculator. Okay, so rules for multiplying and dividing. You multiply the coefficients or the numbers out in front, and then you add the exponents. So we don't even really need a calculator unless our numbers are outrageous there. But it says whatever we do, you either multiply or divide the coefficients. Problem 3a says 8 times 10 to the 3rd meters times 1 times 10 to the 5th meters. So we multiply the coefficients. So 8 times 1 is 8. And then the power, we still have times 10. The powers are added. So 3 plus 5 gives us a value of 8. And we had meters times meters. So our unit becomes squared meters. Now, that is our answer. Pretty easy there. But we always need to double check with our calculator to make sure that we had this correct. So again, I'm going to put it back in our standard mode here. And I'm going to put 8 times 10 to the 3rd times 1 times 10 to the 5th. We press enter. Again, we're not in scientific notation. We change that here on our calculator. And look, 8 times 10 to the 8th. Exactly what we just came up with on our problems using our rules with our exponents. Now we tried one multiplication. Let's go ahead and try one division. Let's try 3e. So we have 8 times 10 to the 4th grams divided by 4 times 10 to the 3rd milliliters. Now, the difference here is this. Instead of adding the exponents, you're going to subtract the exponents. But first, what you must do is you must perform the mathematical operation for your coefficients. So what we need to do, 8 divided by 4, which is 2, times 10. Then you have a power of 4 and 3. So what you're going to do, 4 minus 3, because it is 4 divided by 3, that gives us a power of 1. And look here, we're in grams per milliliter as our unit. Now, again, we need to double check our answer here with our calculator. So what we do, I'm going to put this back in standard mode here. We have 8 times 10 to the 4th divided by 4 times 10 to the 3rd. We press enter. That equals 20. Again, we're not in scientific notation mode. We get into scientific notation mode. Check that out. 2 times 10 to the 1st, 2 times 10 to the 1st. So our answers do check out. Now, you need to do the remaining problems that I did not do. So on this page, you need 3B through 3E, or excuse me, 3D and 3F through 3H. As well on page 2, you need 2B through 2F with 2H. And on page 1, you need 1B plus 1D through 1L. Again, any blank problems you need to do on your own. All right, so I hope you have enjoyed this episode. And as always, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe.